Now to our second speaker, Maryam Ganni, who, as I said, spoke last time, and she is going to give you some information and give you a speech on how to make an impact with your presentation. Maryam.
Thank you so much.
Mute my audio.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. If we have time, I was thinking, since I wanted to keep this just about my journey short and sweet, if I don't finish the whole 20 minutes, I can give you the speech that got me to the world stage. So I'll start by, I would love to tell you a little bit of my journey of how I got to the world stage. So it all started in 2019. I was walking into a McGill University class in Montreal. I was walking into that class for the third time this time. I'd given up on finishing university twice already, but this time something was different. The reason being is because a couple years before that, I was diagnosed with an incurable condition that would slowly take away my eyesight. And the last time I was in a classroom, I was taking a math exam and I just kept erasing and rewriting and erasing. And I didn't know what I was doing anymore because I couldn't see what I was writing. So I decided to drop my pencil and I told myself, I'm quitting. I just felt so discouraged. But at that time, when I came back in 2019, something was different. I walked in with determination in my heart and a white cane in my hand because I'd done 3 years of vision rehabilitation and I was ready to take a chance. I was ready to challenge myself, to take up a new challenge in my life. And it's in that very course that during the end of the course, when I gave a final presentation in class, that my professor came up to me. His name was Brendan. And he said, Maryam, have you ever thought of taking up public speaking? I mean, I see you becoming a great speaker. And I thought, well, yeah, Brendan, like that's a dream, but that's just a dream. I mean, how can I become a speaker? And what would I even say? I don't even know what to say. I don't have experience. I don't have skills. I don't have the knowledge. What value can I possibly give people? And he said, well, it's very simple. You just talk about your story. You know it. It's in you. You have a story to tell, and that story can impact the world. And he said, believe it, and you will see it. Then he offered me to speak for his course. And I said yes. So from that time on, I started speaking for Brendan's class at McGill University. And every single class he gives, I always follow him. And I'm still speaking for his class all the time. Since then, I've developed my story. I started giving it to different audiences. And he kept telling me the same advice. He kept telling me, Maryam, just give your story. You know your story. Keep practicing it. Keep refining it until you master that story. Eventually, in one of his courses, somebody came up to me and said, hey, have you ever heard of Toastmasters? I said, no, what is that? And she said, I totally see you in there. So I took her recommendation and joined Toastmasters in November of 2021. Now, when I joined Toastmasters, the person who welcomed me happened to be the founder of that club. His name, Scott McLaughlin. He quickly became my mentor. And what Scott did is that he recommended me to start competing right after he heard my story. He said, have you ever thought of competing on the world stage? I mean, I know you can get there. I have a feeling that your story can impact the world. Believe it and you will see it. And I said, oh, do they know each other? So I thought, okay, I'll take that challenge. So I used that same story from the club level, started rehearsing it, practicing it, getting feedback, refining it until that same story took me from the club level all the way to the world stage. And this year in August, I actually finished third with my second speech called You Have No Idea. First one was called The Straw. And I used a simple straw to create an impactful message. Now, I learned one really, really important lesson throughout this entire journey. I learned that to become an impactful speaker and to speak with impact, you don't have to have the best skills, the most refined skills. You don't have to be the most seasoned speaker, have the most experience. All you need is a story, your story. But if you're anything like me, you've probably wondered, well, I don't know, I don't have any more stories to tell, or my story is way too ordinary, it's too simple, I don't think it would do anything for the world. But the truth of the matter is that any minor thing, any ordinary moment can turn into an extraordinary story. It could be as simple and as straightforward as a walk in the park, literally. It could be a fleeting moment that you had with a butterfly, or something that you witnessed, or a conversation that you had with a stranger. That moment can turn into a big message. The most important is knowing how to communicate that story, knowing how to turn that story and to make it impactful. So I put together 3 key elements that really helped me. And they're not technical, but I believe, and from everything I've learned from all the coaches that I worked with, world-class coaches, I believe these are elements that are important. They're key elements in knowing how to create a meaningful story and how to deliver it with impact. Number 1 is authenticity. Now, I want to tell you a little anecdote. On the world stage, perhaps it was also nerves, but everybody kept telling me, Maryam, be yourself. And actually, at the district level, right before I stepped on stage, there's a lady who looked at me and said, she was sitting right beside me. And she said, Maryam, I just want to give you one advice. Be yourself. She said, I saw you speaking. I heard you speaking before virtually, and it put tears in my eyes. And what I really liked about you is that you were so authentic. So I said, you know what? That's the best advice I've ever gotten. And I took that to the world stage. And while I was telling my jokes to the audience and delivering my humor, I was laughing at my own jokes with the audience. I was having so much fun. And I thought, that is who I truly am as a person. I like to be bubbly, I'm spontaneous, so why not just show it? And we often learn to be extremely polished. That's okay, that's totally fine, that's very important. But there's a difference, in my opinion, between being polished and being programmed. So don't be polished, but don't be programmed, don't be too rehearsed. That would be an advice, something that I learned. There's also something that I really love that my coach told me. And he said, Maryam, who you are on that stage will shine brighter than what you actually say. Who you are means so much more than what comes out of your mouth, because people can feel it. They want to connect with a real human. They want somebody to be real, and they will know if you're not being genuine and if you're being over rehearsed. So that's a huge lesson I learned. And also I think Craig Valentine said that, Darren LaCroix, if you know them, they're world champions from past years. And they always say, don't deliver a speech, don't deliver a presentation, create an experience. And that leads me to my next point, which is vulnerability and emotion. That's a huge one in my opinion, because I was told, Maryam, you should, connect with your audience more, show them how you felt. When I got my diagnosis and my first speech, when the doctor told me you're going blind, show us how you felt. And I thought, well, how do you do that? And Darren LaCroix told me there are ways for you to portray emotion without even speaking. We can see it on your face. You can take long pauses. You lower your voice. But he said, we need you to take us on that journey. We need to feel what you felt in that moment. One of the most powerful tools they taught me, the coaches that I worked with, to use is internal dialogue. He said, when you tell us what was going on in your head at that very moment, we automatically connect with you, because everybody wants to know, well, I wonder what she was feeling. I wonder what they were thinking at that moment. So relive the moment and take your audience with you on that roller coaster. Take them through the highs and through the lows, and use what my mentor showed me. He showed me a beautiful article that spoke about the brain, how the brain works, and how our brain automatically responds in an emotional way. And he showed me that if you use, you don't need to use all of them, but some of the most basic human emotions, there are 6 of them: anger, fear, surprise, disgust, and there were 2 other ones, but there sadness and happiness. Those are the 6 basic human emotions. If you use a couple of those, you are sure to win hearts of the audience. But going back to taking the audience on your journey with you, I remember Darren telling me it's called VAX. We want to know what you saw in that moment. For me, I mean, I didn't really see much because I'm legally blind, but what did you see? What did you feel? What did you smell? Where were you sitting? Did you have a coffee? When you talk about smells, people automatically associate memories and emotions to that. And so that is a very powerful way. And often we believe that being vulnerable or showing vulnerability is a weakness, but it's actually a superpower when it comes to speaking, because that's when you draw your audience in. That's when you show them how you truly felt, how you were affected, and they will connect with you automatically. So show your emotions. Another point that I learned, and that's a comedian who told me that. He said, tell your story like you're telling it for the first time. I said, but how? I rehearsed so many times. I practiced over and over and over again. I gave my speech so many times to so many different clubs that at the end, people were telling me, Maryam, we don't feel anything. I didn't feel anything. I'm supposed to cry. This is a huge diagnosis. This is huge. This is a big deal. I didn't feel any emotions. And I thought, how come? So I started becoming a little too automatic. And what I did, that little trick that I'm going to share with you, really worked with me. I did that with the comedian. So he sat down with me and he said, okay, I'm going to interview you. And he asked me questions that are extremely deep of what I went through in that exact moment. He helped me relive the moment of my diagnosis. He asked me, what were you doing? What were you saying? What did the doctor say? Did you call your parents? Who did you call? What did you tell your mom? And new things started to come up from my own story that I had forgotten about. And as I was reliving them, I felt that sadness. I felt the old Maryam who was vulnerable and sad about that diagnosis. So I was able to reconnect with my story, and that gave me a new perspective on it. And when I delivered it again on the semifinal stage, the emotions came out and automatically I connected with the audience. Now I'm going to go to my 3rd point, and that I think is the most important one. I had a conversation with another world champion, Alexander Matt, who's also from Montreal. He shared that transformation is probably the most important part of your story, because that's where your character, as you're the hero of the story, go from point A to point B. That's when there's the before and the after. That's the path that you create for the audience to follow. What are you going to leave the audience with? How do you want them to feel, think, or what do you want them to do after? What action did you take that was different, that made you transform? The transformation is where the magic happens in a story. That is the culminating moment of the story where that's where the aha moment happens. That's the most powerful moment. And so that is where I realized, and I also learned to spend more time, to take my time, to take the pauses, to truly get into that moment and connect with my audience. And I even got closer on stage to talk to the audience and to make it feel more personable. Now, I'd like to share with you another point. And this one comes from a great speaker. Her name is Patricia Fripp. She always says, your last words linger. Now, that is so true, because whatever you say at the very end, people will walk away with, because they say that something like 50% of the speech of what you gave is forgotten by 24 to 48 hours. People only stay with how they felt, how you made them feel, and your last words. So I learned to make sure that my last words had impact, had power, and that's where the message is. So this is where that simple idea, the encounter with the butterfly, turns into a big message, just like I did with the straw. I mean, I was talking about a household item. It's just a straw, and it's about looking through a straw. And on my world speech, it was a basic sentence that my father would repeat to me: "You have no idea." That turned into a bigger message that is on an international level, that was addressed for the whole world. So the last words linger. Mark Brown shared something with me, and he said, "Maryam, God forbid, if this was your last day, what would you want to share with the world? What do you want to leave the world with? What would be the last thing you'd ever share? Choose wisely." And I think that really helped me tighten the speech, because the toughest part for me was tightening the speech. I mean, I started with pages and pages with 3,000 words, and that was just weeks before the final speech, and I had to bring it down to 650. So I needed to know that every word had to have an impact, and my last words had to have an impact, because the last words linger. Now, on that, I'd like to remind you that you have a story to tell, that your story is impactful way beyond your imagination, that if you keep practicing your story, that if you keep working, that if you keep receiving feedback, that if you keep saying it over and over and over again, you'll be pleasantly surprised that by the end you'll have mastered it. And who knows, maybe you're going to be the next world champion, and maybe your story will bring you all the way to the world championship stage. Thank you.
VA hospital. Mute my audio.
And one of the things that she shared, she has time for questions. I think she'll answer some of those questions. So maybe we'll see if we have some questions from the audience on suggestions from her. I don't see all the audience, but we'll.
Audio.
Can we see all the members and see if there's some hands there? Okay.
Judy and
Just speak
Greg
up if you have a question.
Judy and Greg have their hands up.
Judy and Greg have their hand up.
Mute my audio.
There's so much information there. I'm sure that questions will occur to people later on, but
Tom, I had a question.
okay. Yeah, is that Greg?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Maryam, again, wonderful presentation of knowledge and experience you shared with us today. You brightened our lives by giving what you shared here, and I appreciate you. I know you went through volumes of pages for your speech. For our viewers that might consider competing, did you examine the judges' ballot at all and pull anything that you might share with us
Yes.
from the ballots?
Thank you so much for that question. I wanted to mention it. Actually, I did, but I was getting conflicting advice. So that is an advice on itself, not to take too much conflicting advice from too many people. But some people said, don't look at the judge's ballot too much, because then you're going to become too robotic and you're going to want to cater to it too much. Other people said, study it to the T and know exactly what they note you on. Now, if I had to do it again, I would study it a lot more. I did go through it. There was one point that Linda Marie Miller, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's finished second at some point. She shared it with me, and she said it's something that's very subtle on the judge's ballot, but that seems to be a common aspect that they look at throughout every single speaker, and every single world champion has that. It's what the speaker demonstrates that is not said into words. It's very vague, but it basically means, what are you projecting as a speaker? So I thought this to me is sort of authenticity. They want someone who's authentic in their delivery, in their speech delivery. The other thing that I would have done differently is to look at the aspect of delivery, the aspect of inflections, of gestures, of mannerisms, expressions, vocal variety, and use of the stage. I found that those are very important points for the judges, that they take them very seriously. And when we looked at them later on, when we did a recap of everything with my coaches, we realized that this is what was different between the third, second, and first place. So really, at that level, it all goes down to not just content, but the gestures, the use of your voice, the movement on stage, to really exaggerate it, yet try to make it look natural. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I agree with what you said, and just a thought for you. How powerful was the message, and how you use those different things that you shared with us, and to make that? I can tell you from judge number 1 that you were rated high on my ballot.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And you're talking about the world speech?
I was talking about the world champion of public speaking.
Yeah.
Maryam, I have a quick question, and you can tell me. I know that the last couple of years, because of COVID, there are some options about whether you do it on Zoom or whether you do it in person.
Yeah.
How did you do yours?
I did it
And what are your feelings about options?
Yeah, I did it absolutely. If I have a choice for every single presentation, I would any day do it in person, because to me, audience connection is number one. I love being with people, connecting with people, especially if I can't see them, and I can't feel their energy. That wouldn't work for me. So I really wanted to be there, but I know for sure that next year they already decided that they're only going to do it in person. It's not going to be virtual. So that will give a better camera angle, because what they did this year and previous years post-COVID is that they gave a wide angle view of the stage. So we looked kind of miniature on stage, whereas the other years you could really see people moving and different angles of their faces. So that's probably what's going to happen next year.
I just want to tell you, there's one thing that I got out of your speech that I don't think probably was your intention, and that is the fact that you joined just shortly ago, not very many years ago, and there was someone there that encouraged you.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that I think members of all of our Toastmaster clubs and all of our audience here can take away from this particular meeting. And who knows, when that person walks in the door of your club, if you encourage them, you just might be encouraging someone that goes on to become a world champion.
Absolutely.
And so treat each and every one of those guests, even though they might surprise you. When I walked in my first meeting, no one ever would have thought I would have ever won a contest anywhere. Laura has a question. Laura's from 797. Oh, okay. Okay, Judy, next.
Yes, thank you, Tom. And thank you, Maryam, for sharing your light. It was powerful. My question to you is, like, you won at the semifinal that got you to compete in the finals. So did you have to change your speech? Because my understanding was you had to come in with a totally different speech, right?
Yes.
You changed your story dramatically. I mean, how were you able to use your vision when you lost it? Was that your original speech, or was that your the final speech?
Yeah, I know this is confusing even for us who made it to the semifinals and found out, didn't even know how things were working, because it was my first time competing ever. Yes, I did join in 2021. I only started competing last year because I didn't have my 2 levels. But the first speech, which got me all the way through the district to the semifinals and past the semifinals, is called the straw. And I used this exact straw and distributed a couple of them afterwards. And after that, we needed to come up with a completely different speech. And the rule book said substantially different. So it doesn't give you a percentage or anything. It just says it has to be substantially different. And you need to fill out an outline of your first speech, which is the semifinals. There is one judge who is assigned to be a content judge, and all that judge does is just look at your outline of your first speech and compare with your new speech and make sure that it's substantially different. So they have to be complete different stories. I know many have used similar techniques, similar approaches, somewhat similar sentences here and there. Maybe the words are a little bit similar, but the whole story in itself is completely different. My second one, which was the world speech, I called it "You Have No Idea," and it was about my relationship with my father. And that I wrote 2 weeks before because I didn't have a speech. I didn't think I would make it through.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Okay. If someone doesn't let me know about any other questions, I don't necessarily always see the hands and so as if there are no other questions, I will leave you with something that Maryam didn't tell me to say, and that is that she said that she might be willing to visit some of your clubs. If you contact me, I will pass the information along to her, and she may just come all the way across the country to speak to one of your clubs. So I'll let you guys work out the details, but if you're interested, contact me and I will make sure she gets that information. Thank you again, Maryam. We so much appreciate your being here. And hopefully we'll have produced somebody in District 12 that beats you next year. No, we don't want to say that. Hopefully we will produce some speakers that have improved their technique based on what suggestions you might have given them. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here again. And thank you for staying up for us.
Oh, good. I'm always.
Okay,
Thank you so much.